Hey everybody, welcome to the very, very first episode of Conversations with Josh. My name is Josh McCabe, and I have missed podcasting. I had a podcast called Overflow Beyond the Music, where I was going beyond some of the music conversations with some of your favorite artists. But, you know, I'm a pastor, I'm a musician, I'm a family man, I love hockey. And I wanted to expand beyond that. I wanted to start having some conversations with people that I found interesting. I wanted to go beyond just whatever was on the PR sheet. I wanted to go beyond the new album, beyond the new book, whatever that was. And I wanted to have some conversations that dove even deeper than Beyond the Music did. And I'm really excited about this new approach, this new podcast, mostly because I get to just have some really fun conversations with some really good people. That's why I called it Conversations with Josh. I didn't want to call it the Josh McCabe Show or anything like that. I didn't know what else to call it. So I thought Conversations with Josh just felt like a very simple and accurate approach to what I'm trying to do with this podcast. And I really just want to be raw. I want to be honest. I want it to be like two people having a coffee or hanging out over lunch and just talking about life. And I really hope that through that, you'll get to know some of these guests in a deeper way. You'll get to know me in a deeper way. And really, I hope that it would encourage you, whether you're a musician, whether you're an artist, whether you're in the leadership realm, whatever world you might be in, I really just hope that it would offer you just some insight and even maybe some entertainment. And, well, without any further ado, this is the very first episode of Conversations with Josh. My name's Josh McCabe. I'm your host, and I want to take you into my very first interview with somebody that I highly respect. I haven't had the chance to know him specifically as well, but got to know him from a distance over the last few years. He's part of a band called High Valley. He's the lead singer, the main songwriter for the band. This is Brad Rempel of High Valley on Conversations with Josh. All right, well, it is my pleasure to welcome in, and it only feels appropriate to welcome in not only a fellow Canadian, not only a country artist, guy who loves Jesus too, but a fellow hockey fan for the first episode of this. Brad, how are you doing, man?
Doing really good, even though the Preds are not doing that good right now, but thank you.
That's tough, huh? Like,
I was there with my son when Saros got injured, and the whole 5 goals in the first few minutes of game one is not a beautiful thing.
Did you see the, I'm not sure if you saw it, I saw it on Twitter, but did you see the Avalanche left the final score on the board? That's terrible.
I know, 7-2. You're just there for the pregame morning skate, and all you get reminded of is 2 days ago that you lost 7-2 every time you look up at the scoreboard. But I'm sure.
I mean, how do you think?
How do they play through guys booing them every day and telling them how horrible they are? Like, surely they've got pretty thick skin at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you think I feel though being trolled? Like I'm a Leaf fan, so I get trolled all the time.
Yeah.
But man, it's good to catch up with you. I know you got a busy day today, so lots of stuff going on. And for those of you listening who aren't familiar with who I'm interviewing, this is Brad Rempel of High Valley. Dude, I read that you guys were the highest selling Canadian band in history with 500 million streams.
Somebody's probably been lying to you, man. But no, that does sound good. I think that's in country music.
In country, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. There's been some great country bands come out of Canada over the years, but we're definitely not the highest selling Canadian artists in history. I can tell you Drake or Justin Bieber might have us beat by just a handful of billions of streams right there.
It's funny because when you think about that, like you instantly, like when you try to think about like who the highest selling Canadian artist is ever, like I immediately want to go to like Rush or like I want to go back.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I guess with streaming the way it is to be more accessible per stream, you would have to think someone like a Drake or a Bieber's maybe got that title.
Yeah, I would think so.
Or The Weeknd or something. But
yeah.
I thought I wanted to hear a little bit about growing up in Crete, Alberta. I had the chance to visit Crete, and I could describe it for people, but I thought maybe you could describe it a little bit better than I could.
Yeah, it's interesting because Crete, depending on who you hang out with when you're there, you could get very different versions of what the town is. So, growing up, there was 1,000 people in town. There was one year when we went from 1,000 to 2,500 people in one year, and the additional
It's like
1,500
a
were
baby
all.
boom.
It was Bolivia, South America.
Wow.
1,500 Mennonites moved from Bolivia, South America, to Crete, and my town is 100% Mennonite. Everybody speaks Low German, Plattdeutsch. It's kind of the poor man's German that the Mennonites grew up speaking out in Germany and Holland and Russia, and then they scattered all over the world to the most remote parts. And one of those very remote parts was Crete, Alberta, up by we're the same line as Juneau, Alaska. So in the winter, you take an ice road over the Peace River to get to our town.
Yep.
In the summer, you take a ferry. A very liberal church in my town would be the English church. If you speak English in church, that's considered the liberal side. And then
Wow.
on the conservative side, you would have the Old Colony Church, which still would have in churches, they wouldn't have electricity. My grandparents both had their funerals in the Old Colony Church, and it was well below
Yeah.
minus 40 for my grandpa's funeral. And even then, there was just like not a regular furnace to church. It was freezing cold inside there. It's very old school. So it just kind of depends on who you hang out with in Crete. There's a good chance that they're from Bolivia, South America. There's a good chance they're from Mexico, like my mom and dad, Mexican Mennonites. And then there's a good chance that you're with a wild and crazy liberal people that go to an English church. So those are your options.
You know, it's funny. A couple years ago, we were doing a tour and we were up in Crete. We did the ice bridge thing. So we had to go, I think, from Crete to Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
And like they're like, yeah, don't worry if the water starts kind of rising up on you a little bit. You're fine. I'm like going, are you people insane? And the funniest thing is that like we pull into the church and I say to my guitar player, I go, oh, hey, Crete, this is like where High Valley, like those guys are from. And so we get loading out, and sure enough, it's your brother helping us unload the car. I go
Brian?
like, what are the chances, Brian?
Yeah. That's
I
awesome.
go, what are the chances of that?
Yeah, you would have been at the EMMC church, which is the Evangelical Mennonite Church.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, that's it's a great church, but it's that would be considered just
really liberal.
very incredible. Yeah, I always explain it to people like if you were raised in the South in an incredibly conservative Baptist church,
Yeah,
that would be the equivalent of a very liberal church in my town.
when you talk about like, I kind of found that term interesting. Like you talk about liberal, and I instantly like the pastoral side of me goes to like liberal theology or
Yeah,
whatever that would be. Like, do you mean when people refer to it as liberal, is it like, oh, is that the church with the drums, or is
exactly.
it like it's more like you say like very contemporary, too contemporary for others, or explain that a bit more.
It's confusing, and I mean, we could talk about it forever and get into weeds, but um,
Mhm.
it's confusing if you're not raised in Mennonite circles. But when I say liberal, I pretty much mean English. So if you speak
Right.
English in church, that's considered a more progressive way of doing things. For example, if you go back to when Martin Luther wrote the Bible in
Hmm.
German, translated the Bible in German, that was obviously a huge deal, right? The Reformation,
Yeah.
they wanted to kill him. Why would you be making the Bible accessible to your average, plain, ordinary person? Only the priest should be able to read the Bible, and he should tell you what it
Right.
says. You know, fast forward, and it's kind of gone full circle. To this day, there are Mennonites all over the world that now believe only their pastor should read that same German Bible that Martin Luther
Wow.
translated. and they should not read it themselves, because the dialect that we speak is called Plattdeutsch. It's a Low German, kind of a working man's, farmer, poor man's German kind of slang almost. But the Bible in German is High German. It's the Luther's translation. It's very nobody can understand it. None of us can understand that translation. So it's almost gone full circle back to how it began, where the Bible is for the pastor. He reads it in High German. You don't understand it. Don't worry about it. You should not be. Whereas the liberal churches in our town have English Bibles. People are encouraged to study the Bible and to, find out what it says. So that's kind of the difference that I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's kind of fascinating for me. Like, like some of my roots being working in churches and being a worship leader, but also being a pastor who preaches and has studied theology. And like I grew up in a little I went to a Brethren church, and then grew up in a Pentecostal church in my teen years, and then studied at Liberty University. So I like to tell people I'm a little theologically all over the place. But, it's interesting. I don't think I've had much experience with that culture of faith because I think it is true. Culture and faith, like how you are raised and how you encounter faith is actually really impactful to your journey.
Yeah, I think like my parents, I know my mom and dad became Christians when I was 5 years old. They'd always been in the church, in the German church growing up. I hadn't understood what they were learning, but they got invited to a Bible study when I was about 5. So this had been like the late, kind of early 90s, I guess, right around 1990. And so prior to that, my mom wore the head covering like a good Mennonite woman. They did all that stuff. Everything was German. And honestly, most of my life memories growing up, I was taught about the good news of Jesus dying on the cross to pay for our sins, about forgiveness, about salvation. So I don't personally have the experience myself of growing up in that culture, but I experienced growing up surrounded by it and knowing that my sisters grew up in it because they're older than me. My mom and dad, of course, grew up in it. So it's very close, and it gives me an appreciation. I think a little different vantage point on now living in the Bible Belt for the last 12 years of my life. Everybody assumes, the saying like, as you know, is a pretty common way to start a sentence in a church. As we all know, as you've heard, we've heard the story many times. It's like, well, no, maybe people know, maybe they've heard the story many times, but you take a lot of stuff for granted in the Bible Belt that it's not true. One of my mentors and somebody we support is a pastor in Germany. And he said they kept on having these mission teams from our church in Franklin, Tennessee coming out there. And he had to tell them, like, you can't say, as you know, or you've heard this many times, and you can't raise your hands when you worship like this, because in Germany that sets off all kinds of triggers, right? And he's like, we cannot assume that our relationship with God is the same as like all these. At the core of it, God is the same, and we're all such different people. But I think we get very pigeonholed into how our experience has been in church and assume that we can say, as you know, and of course this, and you've heard that a million times, but it isn't. I mean, he shares a story, and I love it so much. He said, we have to tell our worship leaders from America to quit doing the same chorus so many times because 99% of people visiting our church are atheists, and we're trying to convince them that God created the whole world. And then they're saying, well, if your God created the whole world and he's so smart, why do you have to tell him the same thing over and over again for him to understand what you're saying? And it's such a valid point, but it's so different because obviously we grew up surrounded by that's how you worship. This is how things are done, and
Yeah.
so I like to think that I have a very different lens on kind of the different parameters of where people might be spiritually.
Yeah, I think it's because that interests me. I mean, you grew up with how many brothers and sisters?
I've got two brothers and three sisters, and then so many nieces and nephews that if mom and dad invite us over for lunch, there are 40 people in the house.
Oh my goodness.
That's not like
Yeah.
aunts and uncles or cousins. That's just if mom and dad invite their kids and grandkids over.
And Curtis is back up in Crete, isn't he?
Yeah, they moved a couple of years ago. They moved back up there and just accepted a full-time position to be leaders of a Bible camp up there.
Oh,
So,
so good.
yeah, very cool.
Curtis, and I, well, I guess it was pre-pandemic. We got some Mexican down there in Franklin at, I forget the name of the place, but it's on Franklin off Columbia
Oh,
by the
yeah.
Target
Yep,
and
it's
the Chick-fil-A
called,
there.
okay. Is it like a hole-in-the-wall kind of place?
Yeah, it's like in a strip mall
Yeah,
plaza.
Pueblo Real. That
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 might be it.
it's
I can't
Tito's. It's
remember.
part of the Tito's chain, and it's incredible.
Oh, is it? Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that was the last time I saw him, and he was showing me all his. He took me for a ride in his truck.
In
That
Elvis, yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah. What a
yeah.
and I mentioned the brother is because for those of you who don't know, I mean I remember seeing High Valley when it was three brothers and then Curtis, you and Curtis were the duo, and now it's more of a band feel, and it's cool how you guys have evolved over the years. But what I wanted to get at that's really interesting because I'm living in Guelph, Ontario now, so the the natural thing for someone trying to get into the country world or be an artist, you think, okay, well, we got to go play the Stampede Ranch, we got to go play Cowboys, we got
Yeah.
to go play all the country bars and just do covers all night and be slinging beers and doing all that stuff and but you guys had a very different road
Yeah.
to where you ended up. So just tell me a little bit about how it's been different than most. I don't want to say cookie cutter, but the
Yeah.
the general assumed way to country music's quote unquote stardom.
Yeah, I mean, we never were a bar band ever. We would have been highly allergic to playing a bar for sure. In the glory days, we were playing church camps. I met my wife at the Blueberry Bible Camp Gospel Jamboree. I mean, that's where we were.
Wow, what a
Yeah,
name!
yeah, I know. I signed a 8x10 for her. She paid me $5 for it, and we've actually got it just down the hall in her little keepsake box.
So good.
We met when we were 16 years old. Got married when we were 19. We started touring across Canada, across the U.S. At these.
Yeah,
Am I
okay,
back now?
okay. Yeah, we're
I
good. We're
think the
good.
recording's allergic to Southern Gospel. I said Southern Gospel, and the whole thing shut down.
No, you literally just blanked out the word Southern Gospel.
That's amazing. So we kind of played at those things. We'd play at rodeos, we'd play at churches, we'd play at county fairs, but it was always like, honestly, the main thing we did was the church is like, we need a country band for the rodeos in town this weekend, so we're going to have a country band in it. We'd be the country band, but it was singing like "I'll Fly Away" and "I Saw the Light" and maybe more like that kind of stuff. And originals. We started recording records. I mean, when I was 4 years old, my family recorded our first record in our church, and it was my three
Mm.
sisters, my mom and dad, and myself. And then by the time I was 12, me and some of the kids from my hometown and my brother Brian started recording records 25 years ago. So it's been a long, long time, but finally there's a guy named Paul Brant who's just massive in country music in Canada. He heard us play a little church in Saskatchewan, and he left us a note saying, would you guys come on tour with me? And we were like mind blown. We got the note, called the phone number, did 3 dates with him, and pretty soon we had a record deal in Canada, and we're playing the Country Music Awards in Canada. And I moved down to Nashville to be a better songwriter. And 5 years after moving down, we got a big record deal and started having a couple hits in the U.S., and it just evolved from that. But it's always been all about our faith and all about our families.
Yeah.
A lot of nostalgia, a lot of trying to give people positive vibes, but also make them think about maybe slowing their life down a little bit, or maybe I write a lot of songs that'll never come true. Like, I never want to die. I never want my kids to grow up. I never want the world to change. I know those things won't happen, but I write about them almost as if maybe they could come true somehow if I get lucky.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Paul Brant. That's where I first saw you guys. My wife and I just connected with Greg Sibel and knew him, and one of the cool things about having friends in the music industry, I just call it free date night.
Yeah.
So we went and saw Paul Brant at the Burlington Theater or whatever. It was like an acoustic tour.
Yeah.
And I had my wife grew up on country. I'm like, he starts doing Breaker 199 Convoy, and I'm like, I've never heard this song in my life, and she's like loving it. And but you guys were there, and then shortly after that, I don't think you came, but we both overlapped in Lethbridge, Alberta. We were out on tour with Parachute Band and Aaron Gillespie and Eric Samuel Tim, and Andrew and Curtis came and hung out, and that's kind of where Andrew and I became buddies. But
sick.
Tell me a little bit about Paul Brant and the influence he had on you, because I feel like everyone's got that artist that really took them in.
Well, he's Paul has done. I could write you an essay on all the amazing things Paul has done for me. Really, really quickly, he has donated. When we were starting out, he had a festival. He came to the house I'm sitting in right now. We had just bought it. It's on 3 acres. And he comes out here, and he wouldn't even want me to tell this story, but here he goes. This is how nice Paul Brant is. He says, Liz and I have been praying for you guys, and we know you're going to definitely have a lot of maintenance with this new house and this big yard. So you're opening up for me in a couple of weeks at this rodeo. I'm going to call my booking agent, and half of my honorarium will go to you guys. And I'm like, what? And I mean, keep in mind, his honorarium is about 5 times as big as ours.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, just there in like a 1-second conversation, he's changed the trajectory of my year financially. And, or one time we were on tour, and he's like, hey, there's some sponsors want to, give me a tour bus to be on this tour. And I and we're in a van. We're in a Sprinter van at the time. He's like, I don't need that, but I told them if they want to sponsor this tour, they're going to have to give you guys a tour bus and pay for the fuel and the drivers. And all of a sudden, in that short moment, we went from driving our own Sprinter van for the next few months to sleeping in this posh bus. So that's who Paul Brant is. But more importantly, he would tell me things like, Brad, the most important thing you can learn is how to say the word no. You don't need to figure out how to say yes. There will be a million opportunities to say yes, but you need to learn how to say the word no. And another incredible piece of advice he gave me, he said, find a box and find what are the most important values that summarize what you want to be known for and what you believe in. And then say, if what I'm about to record, what I'm about to say yes to, what I'm about to proclaim or do or be a part of does not fit inside that box, then say no. And he makes it sound so simple. It's not quite that simple, but very, very good advice.
Because, I feel like, especially for you guys, and to understand why this question matters to me, my dad was in a Christian rock band in the 80s, and back then Christian rock, and it was such a new concept in the 80s that it was the purpose of it was to deliver the gospel to a crowd that hadn't heard it, and I think things have changed in music and allowed for a lot more freedom of expression, that you don't have to write every song about Jesus to still be to still love Jesus. But I think about a band like you guys, and how easy it would be after a hit like "She's With Me," and "Make You Mine" to go, couldn't you just be a little bit more detailed about how you're going to make her yours?
Yeah.
couldn't you couldn't you maybe throw in, a Tito's vodka reference, because that's 100K, like,
Yeah.
and without throwing anyone under the bus, we don't want to ever do that, but have you experienced those, especially because you're a songwriter,
Yeah.
and your name's on all the songs basically, especially on the new record. Where have those moments come in that you go, no, this does not fit in the box of what I represent, what I want to be?
You know what? Phenomenal question, and I can't wait to answer it. But my phone just told me that it's about to die, so I'm going to grab a charger because I didn't realize it was going to drain this fast, and I'm going to
you're good.
right back. Okay?
You're good.
I'll be right back.
You're good. Like, I don't want to feel canned. I want to feel like we're having a coffee and just getting to know each other.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. But you had an answer for me.
Yeah, there's been your question was basically slide in this reference or get a little more sexual with the lyric, or at least that's how I was interpreting your question.
Yeah, totally.
It's tough. It's very tough to know where to draw the line because, like you said, I would never throw anybody else under the bus. I have friends who I would look to as leaders in my spiritual life, guys that I wish I could be more like. Their line of what they would put in songs is very different than mine. Their line of what's a cuss word is different than mine. Their line of singing about alcohol or whatever, just all that. I would hate for somebody to hear this interview and think there was some magic rule about exactly how it should be, because I just don't feel. Did I used to feel that way? Absolutely. Was I raised that it was black and white, period, end of story?
Yeah,
absolutely. But I like to think, I've been watching The Chosen. Have you seen that? I love it so much. I mean, my kids watch it with me, my wife. It's like I don't ever discount the Bible, but I have found watching The Chosen has given me this great appreciation for Jesus and how he handled kind of on a obviously incredibly different scale what we're trying to do, right? Be in the world, but not of the world. And it's like, I don't know. I don't feel, I guess the short answer would be this. If I sing about what's true to me, I like to give as much credit to the country listener as possible. I think they can smell a phony from a mile away. If Brad Rempel puts out a song about how much he loves Tito's vodka, I don't even drink. It doesn't make any sense. Nobody's going to, believe it, and our fans are not going to respect it at all. They're going to be like, what is this guy doing?
And I think, like, and I don't mean to cut you off. I think it's important for me to clarify, too. Like, I'm not, like, I know a lot, you and I both know believers who love the Lord. Like, I've gotten to know Brian Head Welch, and he's out there playing with Korn.
Yeah.
And he feels called to something different, and I know that he is as solid as they come, and like I in no way throw shade at any artist. I don't even want to name them because I don't even want it to become to ever be interpreted that way. But for you feel like you have a mandate to write for, or an identity to write about. And some things don't fit your identity.
Yeah, like I don't think...
And I don't want it to be a spiritual thing.
Yeah. I don't think when I get to heaven one day that I'm going to get any brownie points for having less alcohol references than the average country songwriter.
Exactly.
Right. So totally. I'm not worried about that. But, I mean, there's a kind of trite, cheesy way to answer it, is that I like to play my demos for my kids, and I want them to be able to sing along to every word, and I want... that would be one answer. My oldest son is 13. he just came to us a few months back, right around Christmas, and said he wanted to get baptized, and he did. And it was an amazing moment.
I saw that.
In our life. It was such an amazing moment for me as a dad, but it's also a weird moment because it was some of the most guilt I've ever felt. Kind of like,
What? Why is that?
almost like I felt, okay, so this is, my son has reached this point in his life where he's dead serious about his relationship with Jesus and he wants to get baptized. And I felt like, did I do the things a dad should do to help get his son to this point? Or did he get all that from his football coach that meets him at 7 a.m. on Tuesdays to have Bible study with him, or with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes that meets at Thursday mornings at school? Or was it? And honestly, it's not a contest of who got him there. We know that the Holy Spirit did, but it made me really reevaluate a lot of things in my life. And I wish I could say it was like a switch where I just became the world's greatest Christian the day my son got baptized, because I wanted to be a better leader. But I will say that it was a starting point of me trying to take things more serious. I don't think I'm even coming close to answering your question right now. I'm just rambling, but I spend so much time. It's insane how much time we spend per day working football drills or basketball drills, getting 3-pointers up, keeping track of percentages, doing lifting weights, doing speed and agility training, taking our boys to different stuff. And then I'm like, oh, he wants to get baptized. Oh, that's awesome. Did I make any time for that in his life? And yeah, it's a weird thing, but it's I think we learn more from our kids about faith than maybe we teach them. I'm not saying that's how it should be, but that's been my experience lately. I had so much, back to our original conversation, so much expectation growing up to understand everything about the Bible the same way that everybody else did, to interpret it the same way, to of course believe this and of course believe that. And the way I've had those conversations with my kids, that could not be more polar opposite than how they were. I do a lot of, I'm not sure, or I don't know, or maybe we'll find out. Hopefully we find out in heaven. It's a lot of that. And I don't feel guilty about that, because it's me telling the truth to my kids. I'm not one of those, well, clearly it says in Revelation, this exactly is how the end times are going to work, so now we know that for sure. I'm not like that. I'm a little more, let's read this and try and figure out what it means, And somewhere along the lines, I feel like maybe I went a little too far down the road of not having confidence in what I knew. And that's, I think, what I mean when I say I felt guilt when my son said, I want to be baptized. I felt like maybe he found cold, hard truth in other places than from his own dad. And I don't think he would say, if he was doing this interview, he'd say, no, that's the opposite of the truth. But that's just my own feelings that I wrestled with there.
I think it's natural because, I see my kids that are a little bit younger, 10 and 7, and, my son, he's 7, and him and I make these demos all the time, and he wrote a song called God is in Heaven, Jesus Can Praise Him, and it's just, and he's mimicking what he understands of seeing me lead worship or do whatever. But as someone who's 35 now, with my own kids, speaking about my dad, I can recall conversations like that. It's like, end time. What is this? And he go, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing that I stand out and see, and I would say most about my dad, would be his consistency. Mm-hmm. That he was a man of his word. And I remember, even in a hockey practice one time, I think he said the word, ass. And I was like so taken aback. And he
Yeah.
felt horrible about it. And he goes, you know what? You're right. That was not the right thing for me to do. And I saw like a humbled man,
Mm.
and I saw someone trying to figure it out too. And I think, you know, as dads, we can probably put a lot of pressure on
Yeah.
ourselves. And you know, and some people don't have great fatherly examples. I mean, I'm grateful that I did, and it sounds like family's been, you know, crucial in your life
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely.
But I think at the end of the day, just like people would look at High Valley's music and go, yeah, they were consistent. And that's actually something as an observer I can say about you guys is, again, never to throw anyone under the bus. I can find a lot of CCM artists that are not as consistent as I've seen you and your band be. And down to like your band members, like just insanely consistent, good people. Like they really model after you
Well, we've
in
got,
leadership, and that speaks a lot.
man, I don't, I appreciate that, but I think we just got some of the nicest guys out there. And I mean, I always make fun of us and say we have the most boring bus in country music because there have been times. I remember one time. There's been different guys in the band over the years, but at one point in time, we had a guy literally on the bus studying to become a pastor, while another dude was like painting some painting of a bird because he likes bird watching, and I think me or my brother had a baby like changing diapers. So I said, "Yeah, man, if you like changing diapers, bird watching, and studying Hebrew, then you're gonna love the High Valley bus. If you love getting drunk, you probably want to get on somebody else's bus, you know?" So
Yeah,
we're a dry bus, you know. It's not for everybody to be on the road with High Valley, but I personally don't trust myself. There's a lot of temptations on the road, and I just don't trust myself to involve mix alcohol into the situation. Never really gone down that road, and I just assumed that it wouldn't be great for me. I'm 37 years old, and at this point, I figure if I've made it this far, I probably
you made it that far.
yeah. I still don't drink coffee. I sold cars for 6 years, and pretty much every car salesman smokes like a chimney and drinks coffee like it's going out of style. And I think I just got addicted to chocolate covered almonds and Pepsi at the time, but I had to cut that out too.
You drank Pepsi? Judging by your workout routine, I'm
No,
surprised to hear
I
that.
don't, but I did, man. I used to be 30 pounds heavier, and it was good Mennonite.
Gary Roberts wouldn't be happy about that.
He's the guy, man. The day I met Gary Roberts, I was 30 pounds heavier, and we've been following his stuff, not to the T, but he's come to visit a couple times, and he actually ate worse than we did when we were together. And I was like, dude, this is. He wanted to eat ice cream after we had chicken fajitas, and I was like, man. I said, Gary, you have no idea how happy this makes me that you want ice cream
I know.
because that's a beautiful thing.
I've heard of stories and I want to talk about this just as we close because it's kind of fun, but and I'll mention the record as well. But I've heard stories of guys just wanting to catch a photo of Gary Roberts eating ice cream because it's just like the ammunition
Yeah.
they need. But for those of you who don't know, Gary Roberts, former Toronto Maple Leaf, one of my favorite players of all time, who I actually got to meet at your show in Toronto, and we just got a chance to chat and just talk about life, and good guy. And but you know, it's so funny because it feels like every country artist kind of wishes they were a hockey player, especially Canadian
Yeah.
ones. And it's like all the hockey players kind of wish they were country artists, or like it's like hockey players that are making like 10 million a year, kind of like, man, I wish I could just hang out with Brad and just get to know that guy. And you're like, dude,
Yeah,
call me up.
it definitely works out well, and my band will make fun of me for name dropping, and I've definitely had a bunch of hockey players on the bus over the years, and I will
Yeah,
proudly admit that I am a name dropper of hockey players, and because
it's
12
fair.
year old Brad Rempel would have been very beyond thrilled to get the chances to hang out. I love sports more than I love music. I'm just not as good at them. Thankfully, my kids are, so that's my I live vicariously through them, and it's just phenomenal traveling all over with my boys now for sports. It's so much fun. But Gary Roberts
Yeah.
plays a big part of that and kind of helping us know how to train as a family and how to eat and how to fuel for that. And yeah, I've become friends with Corey Perry and Claude Giroux. And if they both win their first round, they're going to play against each other. And you better believe
See, this is where
I'm going to go down to
this is where we're
Florida.
going to have an issue.
Yeah.
Dude, this is where we're going to have an issue because, like, as a Leaf fan, I'm just like, Corey Perry, you little. Like, I have some words for him, and that's where I get a little unchristian. But I met. Do you know? I met Duchesne at a Thomas Rhett show.
Oh, sick!
Because him and Chris Kimmer are buddies.
Yeah.
But do you connect with him down there in
You
Nashville?
know what? I have not, but I did talk to Chris. I've only met Chris one time, and he was telling me about how he was buddies with Duchesne and that I needed to meet him. And there's just only, those guys, like you said, they get here and every country artist wants to hang out with them, and I'm busy.
I know.
I
Right?
miss out, not that I'm sad about it, but I miss out on a million cool hang opportunities. Like you said, you were hanging out with the band after one of our shows. I'm kind of the lone wolf often on the road. Either I'm trying to get in a workout. Nobody else in our band likes to work out. So I'm either doing that no matter what time of day, or I watch a lot of Facebook Live football, basketball, and baseball games of my kids. So there's and I'm a little bit of a nerd. I'm actually a lot of a nerd. So I'll be rewatching the games after our shows and doing like the 3-point percentages and field goal percentages. And I love that stuff so much. I'll probably be a sports agent someday when I retire.
I could see that.
I just love it.
Yeah.
But, we played the Country Music Awards in, I'm blanking on where they were this year, London, Ontario, I think.
Yeah, I was there. I think we bumped into each other backstage there in London because at the showcase.
Yes. So, and we played Grew Up on that. I think I'm blanking on what song I don't know why I can't remember right now. Either way, we performed at the award show this year, and I got off stage, and it went really well. I remember thinking that went really well, and I felt sad, and I'm not a very sad person, and I was like, what? And I literally had to ask myself. I remember taking my guitar off and I'm like, why do I feel so sad? That was awesome. Then I remembered that right before I'd gone on stage, my wife had texted me and said, things aren't going too well here. He's been struggling with his 3-pointers in this game. And that was why. And I called my son after, and it went well, and he ended up having a great second half, and he was thrilled. And I said, Drew, if you ever wonder how much I love you, just know that I just got done playing on the Country Music Awards, and my first thought after, instead of, oh, that was amazing, was, oh, I really hope he gets his 3-point figured out before this game's over. So
all of a sudden you start thinking about 3-pointers instead of about growing up on something. You're like,
yeah. So I got to be careful that I get my brain in the right place, but that's what I live for. And hopefully people on the record, on our shows, on whatever interaction they have with anything High Valley, they see literally faith, family, and country music. That is our mantra. That is what we've been trying to fit in that box. And that is what it all boils down to for us.
Well, the new record's called Way Back, and like I said, I told you we'd find a way to naturally get to it without it feeling like a left turn. But the new record's called Way Back. It's got some awesome collabs on it. Granger Smith, you got a new single out with him, and Ann Wilson as well. And maybe next time we get a chance to catch up, we can talk about the inevitable blending of the worship or CCM world and the country world that I see happening all over the place. And you probably experienced it too. The amount of country artists you meet that just love worship or really respect CCM artists. Maybe it's because they're all in Nashville. But it's It's a great record. I had a chance to listen through a bunch of it, and one of the things that really struck me, and maybe this is part of your nerding gift that you have, but you're a writer on every song, and that's not always normal in country music, to be a writer on every song.
Yeah, I heard a quote from my hero, Tom Douglas. He said, "I don't tell my story because I think it's the best story. I tell my story because it's the story that I know the best." And
wow.
I think that's what I'm trying to do on this record. It's like, are there better songs in Nashville? Yeah, my neighbor and best friend just wrote that Cody Johnson song, Till You Can't. I think it's the song of the year. It's perfect. It's amazing. But I want to tell my story. It's been 6 years since we had a full record, and there's 13 songs on here and probably 500 songs that we wrote. So thankfully other people can record those ones, and these are the 13 that hopefully will resonate with our fans. And if not, we'll do another record soon. There's no rules anymore. You just keep putting the music out.
Well, man, it's a great record, and I'm not sure exactly what day this is going to drop, but the new record is out officially. Is it May 20th?
Yeah, May 20th. One day after my brother Brian's birthday. So I hope he's thrilled and ready to load out sure. your van next time you're in town or whatever's gonna.
Yeah, exactly right. What a funny coincidence. But Brad, it's great to catch up with you, man. Thanks for taking the time. I know you got a lot of stuff going down today on what they call press day. Your vocal cord is going to be done, but
yeah, my vocal cords get a lot of exercise from yelling at my kids during football games, so they're well.
I know,
they're
right?
well prepared. Yeah.
Well, Brad, I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for doing this, and looking forward to seeing you on the road again soon.
Yeah, next time I promise I'll come and hang, so I won't be the stick in the mud.
Well, dude, I think maybe one of the most interesting things we could probably do is you trying to get me through 10 minutes of your workout routine and seeing if I can survive. I just joined a gym again, and it's time for the dad bod to go.
There we go. All right, challenge accepted. Let's try.
All right, man. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for taking the time, Brad.
Take care. See ya.
Take care, buddy.